Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be doing a full Power League guide. Brand new season just dropped. Let's just jump straight into it. You guys know the deal already. So starting off with Bounty, then also throughout the video there'll be timestamps so you can just see straight away in my description or the comments. Anyways, jumping into Shooting Star then. So Shooting Star, pretty much the exact same meta from last time around, even with some recent changes to the meta and whatever else. Shooting Star just always stays the same. Long range brawlers, first pick options are always going to be Nanny, Piper and Tick. Those three brawlers are absolutely the best when it comes down to Shooting Star. And then the way the draft kind of goes, are really just kind of got to assess whether they pick like a mid, for example, that's a thrower. You know, if they pick like a Sprout or Grom, make sure you've at least got some form of aggression or at least something a little bit tanky so you can win that mid fight. And then more often than not, it's just whether you've got the kind of brawlers that outrange the other ones. This is probably the map you need to focus on the most in terms of the range. So Shooting Star, pretty self-explanatory. Nothing has really changed. Okay, so jumping into Canal Grande now. So Canal Grande, brand new map back into the Power League rotation. It's not a brand new one. Everyone knows Canal Grande and is really toxic. Canal Grande always has been a map which I've pretty much struggled in a lot. I've only had a chance to play it once in this brand new meta, but pretty much from what it used to be, it should be really similar. So you can see the best first pick options. You know, Shelly's still going to be the best pick. She can use her clay pigeons across the grass and also protect yourself against any of those really you know, toxic last pick brawlers like Jackie, for example, like Daryl. Those can be really dangerous, so Shelly's is of course really good. Tick, good against everything when it comes down to Bounty, and Jean just really good at scouting the grass on this map in particular. Eve's going to be really broken on this map, always good on a lot of bounty maps, Eve, but especially this one has always been her go-to. And then you can actually first pick like maybe like a Mr. P or a Grom. It really doesn't matter too much, and Mr. P is actually really solid at scouting the grass, and not only that, at scouting people who are sitting behind that unbreakable wall. The unbreakable wall is going to be really toxic on this map, so a lot of good options. You know, Maisie's starting to sneak into some maps as well. She can be pretty toxic on this map, especially because of her super. You can cycle it pretty easily. You know, I've got really toxic brawlers like Squeak, for example, as well, that has started to come to the meta. So Canal Grande, it really is just a fight for the middle. And then once you lose that control in the middle, it's pretty much GG. Okay, so jumping into the last bounty map, we have Infinite Doom. So Infinite Doom was a wipeout map. Well, it still is a wipeout map, but now they've converted it to bounties. So a little bit of a weird one. This meta is a lot different than normal. Again, I've only had a chance to play it a few times in the Power League meta, but just from playing it in Wipeout, it's pretty much the same type of rule as Wipeout, Bounty, pretty much the same game mode. So, you know, you can transfer your knowledge from Wipeout definitely to this map. So, Jean, really good at scanning the grass with Vision Gear, of course, just going to be a staple to this map and any grassy map. You've also got Grom, who's actually secretly strong on this map, in my opinion, because you've got his other gadget, which isn't used too often, but it can just scout pretty much all of the grass straight away. So that's why he's so strong on this map in particular. But of course, got to be wary, got to be having some tank counters in there as well if you're pairing with a Grom. That's why Shelly's so good, of course. You know, Tara, really OP on this map. You've also got Crows, just so good at scouting the bushes. And then also probably a little bit lower down, you've probably got some other good options as well, you know, like Ems, for example, who can really overwhelm the opponent. I think Spike is a secretly underrated pick on this map with the Vision Gear. Basically, any brawler that's going to have some good presence in the grass and also decent with the Vision Gear is going to be so strong in Infinite Doom, because once you get control of that mid grass, their opponents are going to find such a hard time of gaining it back. Okay, so now we're jumping into Brawl, starting off with Field Goal. So Field Goal, I think, hasn't really changed too much in terms of the meta. In terms of the best first picks, of course, Shelly, insane everywhere, especially in Brawl. Barley is just such an insane first pick, good against pretty much everything, and the best thrower for sure when it comes down to draft. And then also a Crow, because Crow can be used as a lane or a mid to counter a lot of the other mids. And then once he gets his jump, he can be pretty toxic against so many different lanes. So you've still got the same old 6th picks as well, with Buzz being pretty dangerous, Ash being dangerous towards the end, and especially El Primo on this map, because you can create so many goal scoring opportunities so easily with El Primo on this map, so be wary of him. You've also got some other decent options, you know, like Stu can always float around the mid or the lane when provided, and you've also got like Squeak starting to appear in this meta a little bit more, but the same old with Field Goal, nothing much has really changed. So next up we have Pinhole Punt. So again, meta's not really shifted too much in my opinion. We're starting to see the reintroduction of Poco into Pinhole Punt. I've seen this a few times already, especially if you get control of the mid. Poco can be so good, so we're starting to see him rise to glory again. But then you've also got some pretty decent picks which you don't really see too often in the previous metas, like Maisie, for example, can be so good. You equip the vision gear with her and you combine her dash gadget and her super. It's so strong on Pinhole Punt. Her super can literally cover the entirety of the lane, so really OP choice right there. You've also got some dangerous last picks in Mr. P and Squeak, even more so. They're starting to become even more prevalent, that you might not even need to pick them as a last pick. I think they're pretty dominant when it comes down to this meta. And of course, you've got the generic B in the middle. You've got the same old brawlers, really, you know, Nita being a good overall option. So Pinhole Punt, got to be, of course, scared of those tanks when it comes down to the draft. So making sure you've at least got one answer to those tanky options. And lastly, for Brawl, we have Pinball Dreams. So Pinball Dreams is a brand new one into the rotation. I don't think it's been in a Power League draft for a very long time, so a little bit weird to get used to. I've only played it a few times, but I think these should be pretty much the best choices in Pinball Dreams. So, of course, Shelly, no explanation needed. She's just the best brawler in the game right now. Barley on a map with a lot of walls. Of course, throws are going to be pretty decent. You've got to bear in mind that there's no unbreakable walls here, so still could be somewhat of a risky pick most of the time, but I think Barley is pretty solid overall. Stu's going to be pretty much good against everything because that breakthrough gadget is just going to be so broken on this map in particular. I think is an amazing option to have. Of course, you've got M's or any kind of tank counter down one of the lanes. It's going to be pretty hard for the enemy to deal with because there's just so many walls that you can just push up against, and it's going to be really hard for the opponents to get you out. You know, for example, if you have like an M super or a Tara super or even a Nita Bear, it's going to be really hard for the opponents to really pinch you out. You're going to have so much presence on the map. So same old with any type of Brawl Ball map. You've just got this kind of three different archetypes. You've got the control brawlers, you've got the tanks, and you've got the tank counters. So a lot to really bear in mind when it comes down to Pinball Dreams. Okay, so now moving on to gem grab, starting off with Hard Rock Mine. So you can see the best options right here on the screen. So Shelly, of course, pretty insane everywhere right now. Roofs is normally the go-to for me anyways, because not only is he going to be really dominant against a lot of other brawlers, but those tanks, he can always sniff them out with the vision gear, and then also just break up any terrain you need with his super. So really strong option when it comes down to gem grab. I've seen Crow being drafted a lot because, again, you can even pick him as a mid as a last resort, but more often than not, you'll play him in lane and you'll be able to deal with so many different brawlers. You know, Max still okay as a mid here. I don't know, I put Max in the graphic, but Max is starting to slowly drift in the meta, probably more so as a reactionary pick. I would actually start to pick Max. Penny just solid overall as always. Spike starting to drift into the meta a little bit here, but the same old when it comes down to this map. Again, you've got to be really careful of those last picks when it comes down to those tanks. Next up, we have Gem Grab at Crystal Arcade. So you can see the best options on your screen right here. So again, Shelly, got to beat pretty much every single lane. Ruffs, again, when it comes down to Gem Grab, is so OP right now. It's a joke. Even if he's facing off against, I don't know, like an Ashe, a good Ruffs player can keep his distance and just feed super off him time and time again. You know, Stu, he can float around as a mid or a lane. Sometimes it can be pretty risky to draft him early on if you don't ban the right counters. You know, for example, if you want to play Stu, you probably want to best off banning the likes of maybe like a Spike, Mr. P. So those are the best counters to him on this map. So you can see also as well, I've played a lot of Mr. P on Crystal Arcade in particular because he's really good with the vision gear here and being able to, of course, pinch the mid as well. He can just easily shoot over those walls in the mid and really help you in that mid interaction. I just love Mr. P here. And you also got Carl. He's going to be really solid on the lane. More often than not, you see at least one solid tank counter here. So you see the likes of Ems, you see the likes of Tara, you see the likes of Nita, again, Otis. There's always these type of brawlers in the gem grab draft. So jumping into the final gem grab map, we have a double swoosh. So a map back in the Power League rotation. These should be your best picks. So I don't think from that last time the picks have really changed too much. You have the same type of first picks with Shelly, of course, being dominant everywhere. Jean being so good, especially just on this map with the vision gear. It's just incredibly broken, always has been. And Crow's just so easy to scout the grass with his main attack and just overall be a nuisance to the enemy team with his jumps and his slows. So also got some other decent picks as well. You know, Stu, he can float around as a lane or a mid, you know, just depending on how the draft goes. I've seen him playing mid quite a fair often amount. You use that speed zone turret, you can get a lot of value. You've also got Amber, who of course can use her super to break open the grass, and especially that mid grass. So it's going to be really hard for the gem carrier just to kind of float around mid and pick up those middle gems. And of course, as always, got to watch out for those last picks. But again, I've been seeing a lot more kind of off-meta picks on this map. You know, Squeak, for example. Mr. P is starting to rise, and especially as a mid, so good at scouting the grass with his porters. But overall, there's a lot of different options on this map. Okay, so now jumping into heights, starting off with Kaboom Canyon. So you can see the best picks on your screen right here. As always, in Kaboom Canyon, you've got Crow and Colette, who are going to be the staple to this map, because you can just establish control so easily and also get a lot of damage with their supers. Eve is a fantastic first pick on this map as well, because of course she can just bypass that kind of mid bit in the water. Of course, self-explanatory, but she's just so good at maintaining control, and she can secretly start getting a lot of damage. I know hatchlings can scout the grass pretty easily, so really good option. Bonnie, of course, really strong, and there's a lot of kind of semi-squishy brawlers on this map. You don't really see tanks too often, so that's where Bonnie starts to shine, especially with her super form. And of course, always when you have your super in the middle, you can just jump straight onto the high safe and get consistent damage easily. So that's why I always like to pick Bonnie here. You've got some other decent options as well, depending on how the draft really goes, but it's just pretty self-explanatory. Kaboom Canyon doesn't really change too much. Okay, so now moving on to safe zone. These are going to be your best first picks and last picks, and also some other picks as well. So you can see on the screen, the best picks always, you know, Shelly always going to be the best pick on pretty much every single option. You'd think maybe on this map she might get outranged, but just her movement speed is so strong. Again, a map with a lot of water, Eve's going to be a fantastic option. One of the best picks actually in Heist right now, and of course Colette. They got the same mold with Belle, Bonnie and Brock closely following behind on those strong first picks. So safe zone is probably the one for me that is more so about damage than any other map, in the fact that you want those brawlers that are kind of like sharpshooters, kind of mid-range brawlers that get a lot of damage onto the safe. So that's why I really love Brock, for example, 8-bit, even Cole, even Lola as well. These brawlers are going to be able to turn literally one attack into probably destroying your whole safe if you're not careful. So I really like those options. A lot of different picks here on safe zone, but nothing has changed from the previous meta. Okay, so jumping into the final heist map, we have at pit stop. So back in the Power League rotation, and these are the best picks for pit stops. So I think I've only played this a few times, so might be a little bit off with a meta, but these should be good enough to carry you for those wins. So of course, Shelly just formidable in the meta right now. Ruff's going to be a really solid hybrid option. You know, typically you want one kind of defensive brawler, one brawler that can kind of be offensive and also defensive when needed, and then you want that brawler that is pretty much offensive all of the time. That's normally how you want the draft to go, but of course, depending on how things can go, sometimes you can just go all aggro. It's better to go aggro than control. I'll say that time and time again. So you don't want to be stuck with, for example, two brawlers like Stu and Surge, because you're not going to be able to get too much damage on a map like Pit Stop. It's a very base race map, and you need a lot of damage, especially with those tanks. So more often than not, you do see multiple tanky options, you know, like Sam, for example, Daryl, Bull. There's a lot of different options, Primo as well. So Pit Stop, it's more so a base race than anything else. Alright guys, so jumping into Hot Zone, starting off with Ring of Fire. So the Ring of Fire meta pretty much hasn't changed since the last time. Starting to see a little bit more Poco again in the meta overall. So that's probably the biggest change, but everything else is pretty much the same. So of course, Poco's going to be really good at gaining percentage. Same with the likes of Bonnie and Meg as well. Meg is only really good in Hot Zone right now, but she's really dominant in Hot Zone, so making sure like banning her out if you don't have that first pick. And then also Amber's just so good at shutting down so many lanes and just getting consistent supers all the time. You know, Belle's a really good option to have. You always kind of want one brawler that's good at shutting down certain choke points. So whether that's an Amber, whether that's a Lou, whether it's a Belle with her traps, whether that's kind of a Crow with his slows, you kind of want this brawler that can at least shut down an area for a certain amount of time, so it can allow you to get pressure back on the map. So a lot of decent options when it comes down to Ring of Fire. Okay, so next up we have Dueling Beetles. You can see the best options on your screen, and this is a map returning to the Power League map rotation. So again, only a few kind of tests of the meta in the recent Power League season, but I think these should be your best options. So of course, you've got Stu, who's always been so strong in Hot Zone, but on this map in particular, because you can easily just put his gadget in a safe place and just be able to survive really easily with his Gas to Heal style power. Meg going to be pretty good overall. I'd say that she can be really strong in most cases, but you got to make sure that you're covering all bases with Meg. Like, you can often, you know, feed the enemy super. For example, if they have like a Lou, so you got to be careful of that one a little bit. But I'll actually say the brawlers in Ring of Fire are very similar to Dueling Beetles. You know, it's Hot Zone, you get the same type of brawlers all of the time. So going to be pretty simple with Dueling Beetles. Alright guys, jumping into the final map in the Hot Zone rotation, we have Open Zone. So again, another map that has returned back to the Power League rotation, and these should be your best options for this map. So again, Crow going to be insane when it comes down to every hot zone map. Same with Meg as well. You pretty much can't go wrong with Crow on every single one of these hot zone maps. Again, Stu as well, Poco, all of these brawlers are just so strong in hot zone. You're going to see the same type of brawlers again. It's just more so on this map in particular. You're probably not going to get any like thrower last picks. You maybe not really getting many tanks last picks, so it can be pretty safe to assume that they won't go tanks, but of course still got to be a little bit careful. So that's why I like the likes of Pam, for example, or B, or just there's just a lot of brawlers that can shut down tanks anyway on the open zone. But this one in particular, more so than any map, focuses more on can you literally hit your shots, because it's so wide open. It's literally a matter of skill, this map. Okay, and finally moving on to the last game mode, we have a knockout. Starting off with Goldarm Gulch. So pretty much the exact same meta from last time around. Nothing has really shifted too much. The balances really didn't impact the meta too much from what I presume so far. Maybe it shifts a little bit, but the same mode with knockout is that you've got, of course, Shelly, you've got Gus that is really OP, you've got all the throws that are really strong, and Jean as well. RT, these can be really solid first pick options, so a lot to really choose from on this map. I'd say that Penny's starting to drift off the meta a lot more. Wouldn't really draft her too often on Goldarm Gulch, but she can be a good response to certain brawlers. Mr. P is starting to appear in the meta a lot more on this map. You've also got some really solid aggro late picks, which I'm starting to see a lot more, so maybe it's wise to have a few tricks up your sleeve in case you face off against some aggros. But overall, nothing has really changed much from Goldarm Gulch. Okay, so jumping into the next map, we have Flare and Phoenix. These are the best options on your screen right here. So again, it's not really changed too much from the last time I did this, but you've got the likes of Gus, Shelly, and Tick. Those are going to be your best options. I think you're going to see a lot of Gray on this map. He's really good with the gadget, because more often than not, you can just hide behind those unbreakable walls, and the cane can just literally be sprayed straight into the grass, and more often than not, you'll hit someone, remove some of the grass, and just destroy them and cycle your super. So Gray, fantastic option on this map. And then of course all the throws can be really strong, and more often than not I do see a tank late pick on this map. It's really good to have a tank late pick. You know, I've seen Buster work quite a lot, I've seen Fang, I've seen Daryl work a lot on this map as well. This map, more than any of them, I think is really key to be patient. Make sure that especially if you've got some really late game brawlers, I'm talking about Shelly for example, or any tanks, just make sure to be patient, because you can more often than not with a tank win on this map when the gas closes in. Okay, and jumping into the final map in this Power League guide, we have Bell's Rock on Knockout. So this map returning back to the Power League rotation, which I like, but then again out in the open is out, which I also liked as well. But anyway, Bell's Rock, we have the same old brawlers. Again, Knockout just doesn't change in what brawlers are strong. This one probably favors, I would say, the long range a little bit more. Normally it's just kind of like a poking battle between snipers and throwers. This is normally what Bell's Rock is, and it can be quite awkward in some of the gunfights, but overall I think throwers are going to be so dominant. You know, Gray's going to be really strong with his gadget, but more often than not, you've got to be really careful of just making sure that you've at least got some type of answer to a throw, because they're just so dominant on this map. All right guys, it's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this one. So just want to switch things up a little bit. Didn't really waffle on too much about some of these maps, because pretty much all of them stayed the same. But that's going to be it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.